We're so glad you're able to join us today for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chats. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Cal State Long Beach. Before we start our session today, I would like to let you know it is being recorded and it will live on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Also, if you have any questions for our guest speaker today, please use our Q&A box down below to submit any of your questions. And now it's my honor to introduce our moderator. Kim Armstrong is a three-time alumna, earning her degree in 1988, 1991, and 1994. And she currently serves as our Vice President for our CSULB Alumni Council. Thank you, Kim, so much for moderating today, and the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much, Noemi, and welcome everyone. I am so super honored to be here to moderate yet another one of these amazing industry chats. We have yet again another amazing topic today for all of you. And before we jump into that, I do want to just again reiterate what Noemi said. Please, 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 we want to make this as interactive as positive with you as possible. So Q&A box, all those questions. I will do my best to bring them throughout the session today for you. So we're going to jump to it. It is a really it's humbling for me to introduce Daniel Rodriguez. So let me tell you just a little bit about him, because this is an amazing, and I think this will also help you kind of see kind of a trajectory you could take in the field of law. He is a proud alum, and he did earn his undergrad in political science at the Beach. He also holds a JD from Harvard University, pretty good school. I'm a big fan. And he is a longtime law professor, having taught at UC Berkeley, University of San Diego, University of Texas at Austin, before coming to Northwestern in Chicago, Illinois in 2012. He also, while he was there, he was the dean of the law school. So when he got there in 2012, he became the dean of the law school. Professor Rodriguez is now Dean Emeritus as of 2018, and after his successful tenure, he continues to inspire students as a law professor now in our virtual classroom. So he is primed for today. In addition to all of that, because you know that's just not enough when you're a lawyer, you have to stay busy, as my mom says to my stepdad, who is an attorney. You have to keep busy. He writes, he teaches, he lectures worldwide on a variety of legal topics, including the interface among law, business, and technology. And that is pretty significant. There's a lot there. Professor Rodriguez has served as the president of the Association of American Law Schools and as chair of the American Bar Association for Innovation, among other leadership roles. And I bet you there's been a lot. Maybe we can uncover some more of that today. So joining us today, Professor Daniel Rodriguez. He's going to talk to us, as you can see, about 21st century law and lawyering. So welcome, Daniel. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate it. I'm the one who's intimidated. I have only one lonely degree from the Beach, and you have three. So, where do I sign up for another?
Hey, let's go take some classes over at Ollie.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Well, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to return to the Beach, if only in a virtual form. I've seemed to have moved my life and my career ever eastward since over the years, and now I find myself in Chicago. Although at the very moment I'm actually in Northern California, and you know I've had a wonderful, a privileged career, certainly at some terrific law schools in areas of the country. But I grew up in Long Beach. I have a family there. I'm a product of the educational places there. A graduate of Bertram Elementary School and Robert A. and John Marshall Junior High and Robert A. Millikan High School, and even attended Long Beach City College before I made it to Cal State Long Beach. So I'm proud to be of and from Long Beach in so many significant ways. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, great. So maybe before you dive into, you know, I'm sure you're going to take us on a great discussion today. Just a couple of things maybe before we jump in, unless you're going to get to this. Tell us first, how did you get into law? I think that's probably the kicker. Like, what inspired you, attracted you into the field of law?
Well, I certainly owe most of that. The answer to the question is mostly the encouragement, support, and advice when I was there at Cal State Long Beach. I didn't grow up in a family of lawyers. I'm a first-generation college graduate. My mother, who now lives up in Oregon, would want me to say, I'm not a first-generation college student. She attended what was then Long Beach State College in 1960 and 61, although she didn't graduate. And so, but in any event, I grew up without many folks in my family or in my network who were lawyers or professionals of different types. I say that the first real lawyer that I met was after my first year of law school when I was working there. So my, like many folks, it was a little accidental. You can do that in law more than medicine or in other places where you have to take an elaborate curriculum. But I was encouraged, I couldn't tell you an exact moment, but I was encouraged really from about the middle of my undergraduate career by a number of really terrific professors, long gone, unfortunately, but many in the political science department in particular and in economics and elsewhere. There may have even been a pre-law advisor along the way who encouraged me to look into law school, and that was really the motivation.
Awesome. That's very cool. Yeah, professors do make all the difference in your trajectory. So good.
Right.
Well, tell us more about this topic, 21st century law and lawyering, and current legal challenges and fulfilling the careers in law. It has to be, probably have a lot to share.
Well, it's a very vague and capacious topic. So it gives me a kind of an opportunity to pick in a few issues, and I'd love to get into these more in our questions, but also the questions with the group. You know, as I mentioned, I've had a career as an academic lawyer. So I've been a law teacher, but I prefer to call that an academic lawyer because of the nature of the field that I'm in, and that it is we're helping train students for professional careers. Yes, I've spent much of my life behind the proverbial podium doing teaching and writing. I've also been engaged, as is appropriate for a law professor, with many aspects of the profession. And having had the opportunity to serve as a dean at 2 law schools, you mentioned Northwestern, where I served as dean for 7 years, but in a much earlier stage of my career, I also served as dean at the University of San Diego. So I've had the opportunity to work with alums of those 2 law schools who are actually in the profession. So I spent a lot of time on the other end, around the podium and out there working with lawyers and seeing how that world has developed. So I've become, particularly in this last several year phase of my career, an evangelist for the view, kind of twin views, that we are seeing really a momentous change in not only the legal profession, but in the world in which law is utilized and applied and developed, which is really every segment of society, whether you're talking about an entrepreneur looking to start a startup with the next new app, or on the other end, Amazon and Microsoft and Google and the behemoths that are playing such an extraordinary role in our new world. We're seeing, because of the impact of technology, globalization, all of this, much more attention to law and the rule of law. Not to get all political, although I suspect we might drop into that a bit. I think now is as important time as any to cherish the rule of law, not take it for granted, and think about the ways in which the rule of law is under siege and under challenge in the United States and elsewhere. And so that means that those of us who are caretakers of the rule of law in our system, including but not limited to lawyers, need to up our game and need to think of the ways in which we can surmount these challenges and develop various ways of doing so. And so in my area of the world, which is educating law students, I've worked on that. But in the broader world, which is talking about the impact of changes on law and legal system, our constitutional system, I've really tried to, again, be an evangelist for the notion that law is for everyone. It needs to be small d democratic in its creation and its use. It knows no boundaries as much as we think it does by jurisdiction or even by region. Climate change, just to pick one example from so many policy issues, knows no boundaries, and affects us all. And so thinking about the way in which law can help facilitate important change has been what I and so many others have really been focused on.
So it sounds like, things are obviously changing quickly, but how, I guess the answer to this would be, in your role, right, continued learning is important. How do you keep learning? What are some of the things you do to keep learning?
Yeah, well, I try to keep my eyes and ears open, and to reach out to a wide variety of opinion leaders and folks who contribute in their own way, sometimes through academic research. I'm proud of the fact that I've also spent a career not only as a law teacher, but as someone who's written a lot and books and articles and all of that. But you can get bogged down in that, because not all of the great learning is in a journal article or in a book. Some of it comes from the ways in which we consume information, right? In format and fora like this, in in-person dialogues, in audiences of various types. And perhaps it's a prerogative or something associated with getting older and being at this stage of my career. But I firmly think we're talking about our politics, our economics, whatever, learning from the younger generations, those who have, they don't need a label. So I'm not going to label them as one generation or another, but younger people who have both a stake in the future, but also really interesting and novel perspectives on our future, is what I try to be really diligent about. One other just very quick note, like everyone on this panel, and I'm sure those who are listening in, we're to a greater or lesser degree consumers of information on social media. And yes, I'm on, maybe before we end, I'll give you my Twitter handle. I'd love to have you connect. Exactly. So Twitter, all the usual ones. I try to be very diligent about opening myself up to a variety of viewpoints, and that's really can be a tough thing, because you can imagine the points of view across a range. But I think we live in a world in which we succumb to the echo chamber of just news and information from our particular end of the ideological spectrum, or for whatever. And then I think there's a great danger in that. So I'm one who flips the channels across the cable news and reads tweets and Facebook posts and other forms of social media from a variety of perspectives. Not because I'm some King Solomon, right in the middle of. I have views like the rest of us, but I try to interrogate those views by having information come from different sources. And I recommend that. I recommend that to others too.
Yeah, and that has to be hard, right? But what is it that they say about law? Law is absent emotion. Am I quoting that?
Reason after that was made more famous by a scene in Legally Blonde.
Yes. You see where I get my information about law.
But it wasn't created in that movie. That's an old.
No, that's what I'm saying. But
Oliver
I've
Wendell
heard
Holmes.
that. Yes, I've heard that from my stepdad though. But we don't
reason without emotion, and
that's right. Reason without emotion.
So I can't let that comment go past without noting that I think that's an exaggeration. I think that law is also about emotion. It's also about passion. It's also about the full human, and can't be abstracted from society to mechanically just apply sort of objective reason. But that's a longer conversation.
Right. Who knew we'd get to Legally Blonde in this chat today?
I've seen it. I confess.
Well, it's Harvard, right? Harvard Law
That's right. I got to watch all these movies that involve my alma mater. One of my alma maters.
Who knows? Who knew we would go there? Can I ask you? We did get a few questions that come in, and I think that this would be a good one, and it may take you back a little bit, or as part of being a professor. So, how did you decide on a law school, and what advice do you have for our students that are on that are researching law schools now?
Yeah. So I came to that, and if I can just take a very short detour, just to fill in a little bit of my career. My career at Long Beach State, Cal State Long Beach, was unconventional, although you say that about a lot of students. Maybe all of them are unconventional in different ways. As I mentioned, I attended in community college for a year and a half, Long Beach City College. Took a meandering road for the first 2.5 years of my time, I took 4.5 years to graduate once I got to Cal State Long Beach. The first 2.5 years I attended at night. I had a full-time job and was a night student. I'm proud of that, and had some wonderful classmates and professors. And that's one of the great things about Long Beach State then, and I suspect now, is its flexibility and its ability to attract students who have different things going on in their lives and different careers. And then I spent the last 1.5 years. And the reason I mentioned that connection with the question is I didn't, until near the end of my academic career, have a lot of information available and connections, even at the university, to help me prepare. What do you do to prepare a law school application? What kind of courses should you take? I mean, there was a pre-law group. They probably met during the day, and I was working during the day. And so I came to the application process fairly late. I did take the law school admissions test. I was happy with my score. I had done well in college. But even then, not knowing very much about the admissions process, I applied to, I don't know whether I should be embarrassed to admit this or not, a huge range of law schools, because I had absolutely no idea or perspective on sort of what folks look for. That's less true now, where there's a lot of information and data available. So, and I was very fortunate. I mean, it wasn't just luck. I think I earned it, but I was fortunate to be admitted to many law schools. But I would have no idea knowing that early on in the process. So actually, if I could turn that into a piece of advice, certainly gather information. Don't do what I did. I mean, seek out information from folks, whether they're classmates or teachers or other resources, to learn more about the law school admissions process, what to do about tests, what to do about essays, letters of recommendation. Don't just stumble into it as I did in some sense. But second is, I think there's something good to apply to a range of schools and to learn much more about the law schools than I knew going into it. Obviously, by the time I was admitted to schools, some of which were and continue to be highly prestigious schools, very well-branded, I felt confident that things were going to be okay. But I didn't know much about a lot of the other schools that I had. And the other thing is, I never visited any law schools. You have to realize, when I attended Long Beach State, the farthest east I had ever been was Kansas City one time, because I went to a debate tournament representing the Long Beach debate for a weekend. Then I'd been in Nevada for a few days in Reno. But so my journey to Harvard was getting on a train at Union Station, Los Angeles, with my belongings, traveling across country, showing up in a state I'd never been, in a part of the country.
Massachusetts, no less.
Yeah, there I was. So people said, "Oh, did you visit a lot of law schools? Did you, It's like, nope. Got into Harvard, got on a train, went out there." I mean, I make it sound like I'm like Beverly Hillbillies. I mean, it was. I mean, I could have flown. It was not, but I just thought it would be an interesting adventure. I'm glad.
That's awesome. That's great. That's a great story. Let's see. I'm just looking to see. Oh, another great question that came in. That says, so there may be some on the call. I think there's some on our chat today that are not pursuing law for a specialty, but see value in staying abreast of it for their business. What might be some ways to learn the basics of law?
Well, again, the availability of the internet, warts and all, it's good, bad, and ugly, has created much more of a democratization of information about many subjects, including about law. So certainly there are, if you think of resources and readings that you could do, links that you could have, even YouTube videos. That sounds like a strange thing to say, but there's some wonderful YouTube videos about various legal subjects. You have to kind of weed out the wheat from the chaff sometimes, but there's some really interesting information that is targeted and useful for folks who deal with lawyers but are not lawyers. They call them clients, or folks who are self-represented, because not everybody can afford and access a lawyer, certainly. And there's a lot of information you can gain to get up to speed. I also think that, I don't know if all your listeners know the abbreviation MOOCs, massive open online courses that have become much more common over the years. But you can sign up through platforms like Coursera and other companies for actual courses. Sometimes they'll cost you some money, but not 3 years worth of tuition. Sometimes they'll cost you some money, they'll some investment of time. But if you really want to dig deep, let's say, for example, you want to learn about artificial intelligence in the law, and you don't need or want to get a law degree to do that. You have some technical background that may give you some leg up on that, but you really want to learn about the legal dimensions. You could find a enormous range of short courses that you could sign up for and learn that information, often taught by law professors or established professionals. So it's much more widely available than it was in the past.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And yeah, MOOCs are a great way to get incredible information from.
I taught just as an aside, over the summer, I taught a MOOC for Coursera on legal issues in connection with the COVID-19 crisis. It's still up if anybody wants it, and it's free. So if anyone's interested, just look up my name on Coursera. Maybe it'll take you to more interesting courses. But I taught a range of subjects, legal issues that are in connection to COVID-19.
That's great. That's great.
I see part of a question on your chat about application, but you're the boss. You're the boss. So.
No, that's okay. I think you're tracking with them. But so sticking with some of your early experience in coming into the law, when did you make that decision, or did you make it early on, about how to connect or marry law and academia together? Because I guess there must have been a pivotal moment where you said, I don't want to become a defender, or I don't want to become a prosecutor. I want to, teach the law.
So that happened when I was actually in law school and fairly along in law school, because again, since not having known any lawyers and just learning my way as I got to law school, if you had asked me in my first year, some people know the answer to that. They say, I want to be a criminal defense attorney and represent people convicted of crimes. I want to work, represent Fortune, 100 companies, all of that. What did I know? I didn't even know what a lawyer did. So I wasn't in a position, and I figured I would, like many law graduates, try different things and find my way to a fruitful career. But about the third year, in law schools are 3-year programs, working with, first of all, I loved law school from the very beginning. So I couldn't really understand folks that, I can't believe what I have to slog through in order to get to be a lawyer. The first year so unbelievably difficult. I remember watching the movie Paper Chase, with some people saw, and it's supposed to tell a tale about how horrific the experience is of law school. I saw it like, this is awesome. I think this would be really, so I took to it very well and really enjoyed what I was doing and what I was learning. I was on the law review, so I was working on issues of legal scholarship. And about near the end, I had some professors who said, you should really think about a career in academia. And those are hard jobs to get, frankly. And so even though I had done well in law school, that seemed to be, if not unattainable, then not something that I was going to attain anytime soon. But I really thought about it and then started to prepare myself for an academic career. And that mostly meant doing, a much deeper dive into legal subjects, developing a perspective, doing research, really helping educate myself about what an academic career would look like. Then something incredibly serendipitous happened, which was, a lot of this happens from luck, is when I was serving as a judicial law clerk and thought, maybe I'd take a job at a law firm or whatever, I got recruited actually by UC Berkeley, a fabulous law school then and now, to see, because they knew a professor that I knew, and asked if I'd be interested in interviewing. I said, yes, I would. And so the rest was history, as it were. So wow. If it hadn't happened then, in that point, I might have still found my way to an academic career, but it wouldn't have happened as soon. So that recruitment and their faith in me, in hiring me, was something that bolstered my confidence, my self-confidence, that this really could be a wonderful academic career.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, when you're in law school, when you get to those points in law school, right, recruiting becomes a really big deal, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's very competitive, and which firms and which clerking, and yeah.
Oh yeah, in fact, law students probably overthink that, because this is true of, I would say, make a broader point about college graduates, regardless of careers they go into, but also law graduates. They put like a laser beam focus on their first career. Like, what am I going to do when I get out? And that's totally understandable. And they focus on recruitment of folks who come to campus sometimes, or resumes. I think I can say fairly with everyone who I can see on this Zoom call, including you, Kim, that your first career is seldom your last career. The professional's journey, not to mention personal journey, has twists and turns to it. So yes, the first career and the first job, I should call it, is really important. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. And should really think about developing professional aptitude along the way, and not become overly obsessed with what's the payoff of the job I'm going to get right after college, or right after, in my case, right after law school.
Oh, that is super good advice. Yeah, I think that is, I couldn't say it any better. That was amazing. And you've mentioned previously about networking a little bit. What,
Yep.
And getting to know the different schools and researching. Are there networks that that our audience today could get plugged into?
Well, so this also falls under the heading. I mentioned it before. Don't do what I did. I was talking about the law school. Here's another example of don't necessarily do what I did. I say, well, I didn't know any lawyers, and so I had to learn that when I got there. I mean, I don't recommend that. If you are a student, you're a sophomore, you're a junior, and you're thinking that maybe law school's for you, you're not exactly sure, reach out to lawyers in the community. And I mean, literally in and around Long Beach and others. Maybe it takes a cold call. Nowadays we have LinkedIn and we have other sort. Maybe you'll reach out to 20 people on LinkedIn. 18 people will totally ignore you, but it'll be a couple of the lawyers who might actually remember, as I try to pay it forward and to respond to folks, that will be really illuminating. Maybe they'll give you information that suggests that law is not a career for you. I'm not one who basically says, oh, I went to law school, I had a wonderful career. Everyone should. I think that the challenges are different, and folks' ambitions are different. But I would seek out you asked about networks. I would start with the old-fashioned networks of just reaching out to folks who have careers that look interesting, but who you may or may not know, in order to gain that the kind of information and perspective that will really help you. If you actually are farther along and you say, yeah, law is a career for me, I'm actually going to apply to a number of law schools, and maybe you're admitted to a few of them, more than one, and you're making a choice. Don't just pick up U.S. News and World Report or the other rankings of schools and say, well, I'm just going to go down to the list of the schools that's the highly ranked. I mean, prestige is important, but schools are different, regions of the country are different. Their alumni networks are really important. I mean, you would recommend, I know, Kim, if somebody's thinking about choosing Cal State Long Beach or another college to whom they're admitted, they can talk to the admissions staff, they can talk to others, but reach out to the alums. What did you like about your experience at Long Beach? What did you not like that so much, etc.? The same is true of folks who might think of law school. Someone asked on the chat, by the way, Kim, if you don't mind me jumping in.
No, dig in, yeah.
About how to think about law school if maybe they don't have, the world's greatest GPA and others.
Right.
I want to say this. Law school, there are many law schools out there, they admit students of various shapes and sizes. I mean that, of course, figuratively, and meaning with different backgrounds, different experiences, different credentials. And to say the obvious, the higher your credentials, the higher your test scores, the higher the GPA, puts you in a position to have opportunities that others won't have. What we could argue is a matter of social justice, whether that's right or wrong, but that's the way the world is. It was true when I graduated from Long Beach, and it continues to be the case. But it is not the case that there is a drawbridge, in some sense, that is brought up by law schools that basically say, if you haven't achieved just this, gone to this kind of college, achieved this GPA and this test score, then law is not a vocation for you. If I had $1 for every extraordinary lawyer that I've had the opportunity to meet that says about their own journey, that they got a fire lit under them once they got to law school, and they got into law school with what they thought were fairly low credentials and developed others, I would be a gazillionaire. It's really true. Don't let that experience. I mean, if you don't like school, school's not for you, then law school's not going to be for you. But if you really see the journey as something that's really exciting and interesting, both the profession that you would enter into, but also the journey through law school as for you, then take account of your assets, meaning all of the things that you have available, which are never limited to just your GPA and just your test score. Present yourself in the way that is most confident, self-confident, and breeds confidence in others. and also have some candor and flexibility about the range of schools to which you will apply, and you'll be fine. Again, there's a diversity of backgrounds and experience that folks bring to law schools that is really, really cherished.
Is it important before you go into law school that you know which specialty of the law you're looking for, or are you pretty much, do they help figure that out for you?
I don't think it's that important. I mean, the only way in which knowing exactly what you want to do, the field of law you're in, you want to aspire, might be relevant, is kind of the fire in the belly notion, is that it might be a passion of yours that will propel you through times when it's really challenging and hard to apply to law school, to become prepared, to pay the high rates of tuition, and all of that, that if you really know there's a destination there, that might sort of push you through those harder times. But for most folks, even if they think they have a clear sense of what their specialty will be, that will change.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of folks who come to law school, they came to Northwestern or San Diego, or wherever I was teaching, and said, I know I want to be a criminal defense lawyer. It's great. And then halfway through, it's like, I can't imagine why I ever wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer. I'm going to be a corporate lawyer. I'm a public interest lawyer. That's just why they're in law school.
Yeah.
Say nothing of what their careers are afterwards. So I don't think you have to have any sense of specialty. I'll also, this is a little bit of a different question, but I may pivot. We were talking about pivoting before.
Yes,
here's an example of pivot. I also feel very strongly about what I'm about to say. You don't have to have prepared yourself with a particular kind of curriculum while you're in college. Yes, there are a very large number of political science students, I was one of them, who went on to law school, and I wouldn't have chosen a different major. I loved my time in the political science, studying political science at Cal State Long Beach. But I also know that when I was in law school, to my right was somebody who studied economics, to my left was somebody who studied Elizabethan poetry, and the guy in front of me, had studied physics. I mean, there was a range of backgrounds and a range of interests. And unlike medicine, where there's an expectation that you have this coursework, when you talk about people who are pre-med, pre-law is a fiction. Pre-law just means folks who are interested in law school and might think about that. But the notion that there's a pre-law curriculum that is fixed and set, because if you don't do it, you won't have a leg up either in terms of application or success. Don't believe it. The world is filled with terrifically successful law students and lawyers who have undergraduate degrees all over the map that study different things. Also, by the way, don't be that person if you come into law school or think of law school that says, I'm bad at math, so I want to do law because law is all about words. That's an exaggeration. I don't mean you have to be great at math. That's not my point. But things that are really valuable, like learning statistics, learning how to use data, particularly in this new world with big data, those are assets. So those of you who are thinking, well, I'm going to stay away from all of those quantitative subjects because I'm scared of learning those particular skills, so I'm not going to take accounting, I'm not going to do that. I would urge you to do the opposite. Become equipped with quantitative information that will help you as a citizen in society, but it will also help you in the study of law.
Wow, I wish I would have known that a while back. I
was one of those. I wish I did too. Yeah. I
was one of those people that thought you had to have had some political science or some other pre-law degree before you could even apply to law school. Wow.
No, I think there's really, we're seeing more, I'll bang this drum one more time. I think we're seeing more folks coming into law and law schools who've had some experience with technology. Doesn't mean they necessarily studied it or studied computer science, although there are some that do, but have exposure to, again, the use of data, how to analyze data, how to use various technologies. And that might seem remote from law, but it's not. It's becoming ever more important in the practice of law. And in the years to come, it will become an ever more important part of what successful lawyering is, which is solving problems. What a successful lawyer does is solve people's problems. And solving people's problems often rests upon your ability to develop data, to take in the data that you have, to analyze it in various ways, and to solve legal problems that come before you.
Wow, excellent. So let's pivot again, to use the word of the day.
Pivot, all about pivoting.
Let's pivot back a little bit to what we were talking about before. which maybe getting into a little of politics, but
Yeah.
so what are some of your personal thoughts on the current discussion around social media regulation as a way to prevent misinformation to the general public?
So I get into that question by thinking, as I've thought over many, many years in my writing and my teaching, about regulation generally, because that's one of the fields of study that I do is economic regulation and other forms of regulation. So I believe this will tip off a little bit of my politics. I can't help it. I believe that one should be skeptical of government regulatory solutions, which does not mean I'm a libertarian or I don't believe in government or I don't believe in regulation. I think you just sort of start with a healthy skepticism about the capacity and the ability of the government to know more than individuals, know more than businesses, know more than choices made by individuals. And I believe if you start with that skepticism, then the case for developing appropriate regulation and appropriate government solutions becomes more sophisticated and more useful, because you're really interrogating assumptions. You're figuring out where the market doesn't work, and that's many examples in which the market doesn't work, and how to appropriate and how to apply appropriate regulation. And I feel that way about social media regulation. So I'm a strong believer in free expression. I'm not as we sometimes say in law school, a First Amendment absolutist. I believe that some regulation is appropriate, but I start with the premise that whether you're expressing yourself by standing up on a soapbox in a park, or by writing an op-ed in a newspaper, or by communicating your views on social media platforms, that you should start very strongly with the premise that individuals have a right in our country, in our system, to express themselves freely, even if they're raising very difficult issues and controversial issues, and the government should be very wary of stepping in. I also have a skepticism about the government breaking up big technology companies and others because they know better than we know about how to regulate big media, big companies at all. My skepticism, though, has to be met by the fact that some of these incredibly large companies, like a Facebook, like Google, will often behave irresponsibly, will often have the arrogance that befits, mega corporations. And if they're not careful, are you listening, Mark Zuckerberg? If they're not careful, they are going to encounter a populist effort from the right end of the political spectrum and from the left end of the political spectrum, and maybe even the middle, that's going to intervene and regulate them to a very great degree. All of which is to say that they need to behave more ethically, more responsibly, and with our best interests at heart, in order to resist what I think would be a dismal second best, which is the government stepping in and exercising their kind of general control over those choices, which I think would be, and this is not just obviously a uncontroversial viewpoint, which I think would be really problematic given our strong tradition of free speech and free expression in this country.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
One other quick point, if I could make, and I promise I'll make this quick. The one real threat, and we're all thinking about this right now, that is posed by the use of technology or enabled by modern technology, has to do with compromising the integrity of our elections and hacking, whether that's external foreign powers, which is happening, we know, but also internal folks who are. That requires, I think, significant government intervention. That's you can call it regulation, but I would just call it emergency government intervention in a variety of ways, not only at the national level, the White House level and Congress, but at the international level to solve that problem. We can't simply have one election after another in which we are cynical about the outcome, because we simply don't know the vast scope and range of foreign interventions in our elections. That is, I think, I don't know where I would rank it, but I would rank it as very high up of our most significant rule of law problems. And if I may, our government, we deserve in the White House and we deserve in the halls of Congress scrupulous, resolute attention, and not skepticism about this being happening, because it is happening. and it's happening all around. It's happening at national elections, state elections, even local elections are being compromised by technology threats.
Wow.
And not just from one country.
Yeah, there's a lot of actors involved in that, I'm sure. So along this lines, and maybe the other side of it, one of the questions that came in is, and they said, I believe Jefferson said the law profession could be the downfall of the nation. Do you think that the law profession is too involved in government?
Well, first of all, certainly I agree with Jefferson that the legal profession could be contribute to the downfall of government. Absolutely. Well, look, maybe so. You know, it's interesting. We take for granted, certainly we as lawyers often take for granted that, you know, presidents should, and members of Congress and government officials should have, you know, advanced professional education. Lawyers really contribute to that. The majority of members of Congress, majority of state legislators are lawyers. And it's perfectly appropriate for we the people, for the citizenry, to ask the question, well, are we happy with what's happening in government? Are we happy with legislative choices that are being made? Should we be thinking about lawyers as having kind of a special thumb on the scale in terms of governmental power? So I think it's a totally legitimate question, because if left unchecked, they really can contribute to significant problems, if not, you know, the downfall. But what I would push back, I guess, to some extent and say is it really depends on the kinds of lawyers you're talking about. There are lawyers who are scrupulously committed, across the political spectrum, by the way, scrupulously committed to the rule of law. They may have strong, profound disagreements about how best to protect the rule of law, but the commitment and the integrity to rule and fidelity to rule of law, not people, our constitutional government, you know, all of that is resolute. But boy, there are many lawyers of which that cannot be said. That they have that same commitment. They see it as a game. They see it as opportunistic. They see the rule of law as for suckers, not for the integrity of government. And so, unless we have lawyers with the highest integrity and highest commitment, again, ideologically diverse. So I keep coming back to, this is not prerogative of one part of our political spectrum, but unless we have that, then lawyers deserve a bad reputation. I don't wear a sign around my, proverbial sign around my neck saying, don't be mean to lawyers. I remember years ago when I was in California, when I was teaching at a law school in California, the president of the California State Bar ran on a platform. His platform was going to be to try to abolish lawyers' jokes. He was going to say, I think lawyer jokes are destabilized, I abolish it. What do you think that accomplished? What it accomplished was the greatest rise in lawyer jokes.
Exactly.
in the history of California. I mean, that became, and that's just what he deserved. You cannot, the moral of the story is, you cannot as a lawyer be defensive about lawyers and think that they are, woe is me, they are the, targets of society. You have to own the deficits in the profession and try to figure out how to address them.
Yeah. So we are rapidly getting close to the end, and there are two last questions that we want to get to before we wrap up. Is that okay? All right.
I'll try to be
So
brief.
this one I'm going to read. It's a little bit longer, but it's actually a very, very, very fascinating question. So really interested in your take on this. So Arthur asked, he says, my field is psychology and I advise college students. I've read that there's an overcapacity of law schools and pressure for these law schools to accept broader swaths of students, perhaps those with declining the use of LSAT scores required for entrance. I've also read there is a greater use of automated technology to perform many tasks that lawyers formerly did. Many lawyers hate the profession and would not enter it again if they had a chance to do it all over again. So this is a question that
everything's true in that statement.
Is there an oversupply of attorneys in the U.S.? Are lawyering tasks being outsourced to other countries like India that will cut into future domestic trends? And are entry salaries for attorneys 60 to 70,000? It's a lot of questions.
No, I'll try to bring it all together. I don't subscribe to the view that we can point to the number of law graduates, new law graduates, and say there are too many law schools, too many folks coming into the profession, and thus we are over lawyered. I think that In some parts of the profession, to go to Arthur's question, we're seeing automation and outsourcing, but particularly automation and the use of technology replacing what lawyers had done. So a lawyer needing to be paid a lot of money to draft a will, a lawyer needing to be paid a lot of money to do all of that is being replaced significantly by technology in the same way that bank tellers are being replaced by technology and certain forms of the medical profession. And truth be told, I think that's a good development, not a bad development, because it contributes to access to justice for the ordinary person, even though it might have short-term, not might, it does have short-term significant dislocations and disruptions in terms of the entering salary for lawyers. I think lawyers, I'll use the pivot word again, many young lawyers will pivot from being their version of bank tellers to different kinds of fields in the law, and that's a good thing. Some, frankly, who won't go into more newer kinds of fields will become like the coal workers of our time, or the buggy whip manufacturers from an earlier generation, to use a famous phrase, is they'll just become anachronistic, and that's the way the market works. Entering salaries, it's hard to judge. You know, entering salaries of entering lawyers depends on just so many different variations. I can tell you that the average entering salary for graduates of Northwestern Law School is $180,000. We're an elite top 10 law school, and most of our graduates go to big, fancy law firms. That's true now. It was true 10 years ago. I'm proud of that. It doesn't mean they're more morally worthy than other people or that they deserve that. And a lot of that is white privilege, and a lot of that has to do with systemic racism, things we haven't touched on, but I think are important considerations. But that's the fact of the matter. And since I mentioned that, let me finally come to this on it's impossible. Arthur's question is impossibly broad and really fascinating and interesting. But I want to come to this point. As to the question of law schools taking students with lower standards and all of that, some of that is going on. But let's remember something about access to the profession. It is a very white profession. It is a profession dominant that is not nearly as diverse as it has to be and ought to be, in my opinion. The opportunities for Black and brown people and others, BIPOC individuals and others who would enrich the profession in extraordinary ways are difficult. They haven't gotten all that better. And even when they get into the profession, there's quite a pyramid. And things aren't all that much better for women, although the percentage of women in law graduates is roughly 50. So if we make a systematic choice to narrow the scope of the profession, to limit access to the profession, to say we should only have 50 law schools rather than 200 law schools, they should only take people from the top 10%. Universities like our great university, Cal State Long Beach, which is an access university, proudly accessible to diverse graduates, will have a harder time entering the profession, and we will be worse off as a profession. So before we say too many lawyers, let's bring up the drawbridge, I think we really need to think about access and and systemic racism, which is the fact of our life in my opinion.
I wonder if LSAT's going to go under the same scrutiny as the ACT, SAT, but that could be a whole nother conversation for a whole nother industry chat, which we might schedule. I think it should
go under interrogation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we have reached the end, and I want to say this was awesome, and thank you very much, Daniel. This was amazing. I actually learned a bunch of stuff, which makes me happy. I'm sure others on the chat also agree. So Noemi, with that, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to hand it back to you, Noemi.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Daniel. That was a great conversation. Daniel, before we go, do you want to share your Twitter and LinkedIn handle where people could follow you and befriend you?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is capital D, capital B as in boy, which is Barajas, which is my middle name, Rodriguez, 5. So, and I don't even remember what my LinkedIn profile is, but you can put in my name in Northwestern and you could easily find it. And I encourage folks to reach out, not only social media, but anybody who wants to reach out to me privately, happy to give advice. This includes students and alumni. Don't hesitate. I'm so proud of my time at Long Beach, and I so much want to give back that anything I can do to be of assistance, it'd be my pleasure and honor.
Wonderful. We totally appreciate. So students and alumni, please reach out to Daniel and utilize the tools and expand your network to learn more about the law industry. We thank you again for joining us today on this edition of the 49er Industry Chat. We hope you enjoyed it, and follow us on social media to learn about future programs like this. We thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.